Now, another question that I know will be on a lot of people's lips watching this, David, is, okay, so if these 30 to 40 people all got mutilated and were covered up by this military group, how come we don't know about these people who gone missing? Or why aren't their relatives shown the bodies, or why isn't it exposed?
I asked Tony Dodd the same questions, basically, in one of our evening phone chats. I think it was probably after he told me about the Dolby Forest case of these 7 unfortunate people who were recovered there. And I said to him, what about the relatives? What do they put on the death certificate? Mm-hmm. What does the post-mortem results say? What does the coroner's report say? Right? You know, and then there has to be a funeral. Mm-hmm. And he said, in his opinion, and I think his sources infer that the relatives of the victims are never actually informed that their missing person, their loved one, has been recovered. That person is still on the missing lists of the police files, which is terrible in itself, isn't it? I mean, that is terrible. So I think Tony agreed with me when I said that probably the bodies would be removed covertly and sent down to somewhere like Porton Down in Wiltshire, which is a very secret establishment there. Mm-hmm. Might be there for a while, and then they'll probably ship them to the United States.
Well, you mentioned the Brazilian case, which in terms of photographs is probably the best case on record of a human mutilation, which took place in 1988, we believe, and there's a full police report on that. And is there a post-mortem report with that as well?
Yeah, yes there is.
Right. So now, it's quite a controversial case because certain researchers who have covered animal mutilation in a great deal of depth, such as Linda Moulton Howe, who I interviewed for the Silent Killers film that we did, and we discussed animal mutilation worldwide, and she claims to have spoken to Philip J. Corso, who told her that documents in the Pentagon state categorically that animal mutilation worldwide is an ET UFO phenomenon.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Now, however, I then wanted to discuss this Brazilian case of the mutilated man.
Yeah, with that in mind.
And let's just have a listen. Just to recap, let's just have a listen to Linda's reaction. There was one case, I believe, in Brazil where there was a jaw strip and all the other signs of mutilation.
Oh, you're talking about the photos that Gavard presented in Nevada in the early 90s and enrages me. He had not one shred of evidence beyond the photographs. The photographs were sent to me because he never had the courtesy to even contact me, to even ask me what I thought of the photograph, but used my name in the presentation as this is like the animal mutilations that Linda Moulton Howe has investigated. Untrue and absolutely unprofessional, and the wrong way to present anything to an audience when he has done no research of what I call research. Okay. And let me give you the backstory. So somebody tells me that this man from Brazil has done this and sends me those photographs. And I take the photograph to a medical doctor. I did not set up anything. I just put the photos down in front of a medical doctor and said, if you had a victim in front of you like this, what would you conclude? Without missing a beat, the medical doctor said, oh, I saw a lot of that in Vietnam. I said, what do you mean? He said, that's what Agent Orange does to human tissue or any tissue. I said, well, what do you mean Agent Orange does this? He said, in Vietnam, we always had, because he worked in a medvac team in Vietnam, he said, we were always spraying Agent Orange, and we were always seeing animals and humans that had these deep penetration holes surrounded by the black carbon ring because we're a carbon life form, and Agent Orange always leaves black circles around penetrating wounds in flesh because we're a carbon-based life form, and that's what Agent Orange does.
She's saying it's Agent Orange. Now, do you have any comments? What's your view on it?
Well, first time she said that to me, she was quite agitated, really. She said she'd spoken to an ex-army medical officer who was in Vietnam, showed her the picture. She showed him she claims the pictures of the Brazilian man body.
Which, just to interrupt there, David, had the rectal core, jaw strip, seemed to have organs removed, because the chest was sunken right in.
He had his ears removed, and the internal organs into his brain were missing, both eyes. He had 2 little holes in his skull, but we don't know what happened there.
Right.
And he had muscle taken from his arm, small holes, and muscle extracted, and in his thigh there's an oval hole, and his scrotum had been removed, as you say, an anal core. There was something on his feet as well, and his toes, but just forget about that, I can't remember.
Right.
No blood again, no blood.
Right. So, you then, Agent Orange is what she...
Yes, well, I was flabbergasted, to be honest. And this army medic chap had said to her, "Oh yes, we've seen that before, that's Agent Orange," because they were using it in Vietnam against the Vietnamese and the Viet Cong or whatever. And I think some poor members of the public, you know, like killed with napalm as they were burnt by Agent Orange. But I mean, I went on the internet, did a search for Agent Orange, and it's mainly chemical skin burns, which aren't deep. And certainly Agent Orange does not make surgical incisions of depth into the body and remove the organs. So for her, with all her experience and knowledge, to come out with that, to me, was quite a shock. Who was using Agent Orange on civilian populations in Brazil?
Yeah.
I mean, were the Americans... I mean, that in itself is a serious accusation to make by the American government, who will be flinging the stuff about in Brazil.
And we also have the statement from Professor Tony Fremont, because you were in communication with him in the late 1990s and early 2000s, and you showed him the photographs of the Brazilian man.
Yes. So Tony Dodd came here into this very, where we are now, conservatory, our house, with Professor Fremont, who's a human pathologist, who does pathology work for British police in UK crime, murder cases. And we went through a lot of animal pictures. A lot of them were Linda's. He brought one of Linda's books with him, Tony, because at that time I didn't have that many photographs of my own, because I hadn't been doing this research that long. And we went through all those, and then Tony opened the envelope and produced the 6 or 7 photographs of this Brazilian man, put them on the table in front of Tony Fremont, who was quite shocked, and he paused, and then he made some remark out loud, but almost to himself, like, "I don't see how we could do this."
Yeah.
So he was talking about his profession when he said the royal we, you know, we to do it.
So Professor of Pathology has said that, and you've got that on tape, so we can hopefully have a listen to that.
Yes, if we can find the tape.
You recorded that meeting was recorded on audio.
Yes, with Tony's permission.
Okay.
You know, Tony Fremont.
Yes. In late 2009, I visited Wales on at least 2 occasions in attempts to interview Derek Gough, but getting him to agree to speak initially was difficult. He was reluctant to talk because in 1997 he suffered serious threats and a suspicious fire shortly after informing the police about being in possession of the information. The information included colour copies of 11 photographs of 2 mutilated corpses which the police took from him. Derek decided to pass the story to somebody else because Gough himself was in fear of his life. He passed the photographs and information to retired police officer and UFO researcher Tony Dodd. This can be verified by reading Tony Dodd's book, Alien Investigator. Derek Gough is listed in the acknowledgements at the front of Tony's book. On page 257, Tony describes the Derek Gough story, although not referring to him by name. Another trusted contact, with whom I have had several conversations, has given me details of a quick response team set up by Margaret Thatcher's government, and as a result of her cooperation with President Reagan. The team, again made up of elite forces, was on permanent standby to attend the sites of any UFO landing or crash. carrying bleepers which would summon them any time they were needed. Helicopters were permanently ready to ferry them to the scene of the crash. Their role was to seal the site from the public, if necessary evacuating any civilians living within the sealed perimeter. They set up 2 cordons, a tight one around the actual UFO and a wider one to isolate the whole area within several hundred yards. They also attended sites of animal and human mutilations, which shocked and horrified them. As my contact said, they could accept the horror of war, but they were not accustomed to seeing such brutal wounds on animals and humans in peacetime. It was the secrecy surrounding the whole of their operation that made him feel it was his duty to alert the public to what was going on. Unfortunately, the first contact he made was with an inexperienced young UFO enthusiast, the book is referring to Derek Goff here, who secretly recorded their conversation. This young man played the tape to other UFO researchers and talked about it at their meetings. He was very naive because within days a mysterious fire broke out in his office at home and all his files were burned. He realized he was in over his head and contacted me. He sounded terrified. His wife was so frightened she moved out and left him. Luckily, they are now back together again. But he made it clear that he wanted nothing more to do with this investigation and passed it over to me. The soldier had also decided it was a mistake to talk, and he was very wary of me when I first contacted him. I had to send him photostats of my driving license and proof that I had been in the police before he would agree to talk to me. He told me he had discussed me with his colleagues from the quick response team and they had agreed to him helping me, as long as it was very discreet. They all shared his feeling that the public were being kept in the dark. They attended crash scenes across Europe, including Spain and Germany. They were not supposed to make any recording of what they saw, but he has photographs of some of the mutilations, and also a piece of debris he picked up at the scene of a crash. At one site in Spain there were several human bodies spread around the site of the crash, all naked and without body hair, and all mutilated by having limbs etc. cut off. Although Tony does not mention it in his book, he was in possession of 11 photographs given to him by Derek Goff of 2 mutilated corpses recovered by the military team on Brecon Beacon, we think around 1990. So we think that that Tony probably didn't put it all in his book.
No, he was quite sensitive. He was still a very loyal servant of the Crown, Tony. Serving police officers 25 years, and I think he found difficulties often with the information he had and his loyalty to his past employers, the government.
The few cases didn't appear in his book,
right.
in Tony Dodd's book, but he told you about them.
He confided to me that in North Yorkshire, in Dalby Forest, which is part of the North Yorkshire National Park, and it's a huge area of forest, sort of north of Pickering, just south of Farlingdale's early warning station, so you're sort of south of Whitby, so it's a massive area. And this area was quite renowned for animal mutilations, and Tony had quite a few reported to him by a guy that worked for the Forestry Commission, who he calls in his book Cedar. And there's everything from deer, badgers, sheep, fox even, often in quite a small area, on one occasion blocking a road, where the witnesses reported to Tony that the police with some army personnel had blocked the road off until they removed all the animals.
This is all in Tony's book?
Yes, it was in his book, but all this is in Dalby Forest. So I think it's quite significant that over several years there's been a history of mutilated dead animals found in the Dalby Forest area and around Ravensglass and Ravenscar and South Whitby in that area. So he went on to tell me, coming back to the human mutilations, that he knew, possibly from the same military guy, that 7 human beings had been found in the same field in a period over about 3 weeks. So I don't think they all appeared 7 together. This was 7 different bodies, and I don't know whether they were male or female, found in this same particular field, and they had the classic mutilation injuries, tongue out, jaw strips, eyes out.
And interestingly, hair removed.
Yes, and that was a very strange thing I'd never come across, and I don't know whether Tony had. But there was all the bodies were totally lacking any hair. You know, the hair follicles somehow had been stripped and all the hair taken out. So it wasn't just the hair of the head or beards or the pubic hair. It was all over. And
that is similar to what Derek Goff described.
Right.
With the Brecon Beacon case.
Goodness me, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
now, yeah, go on, David.
You just wanted to say that the authorities had some sort of cover story cobbled together in case something leaked to the media, and Tony thought it was quite humorous in a way. The idea was that somebody had been dumping mannequin dummies into the field. So
now there's a couple of other cases which the military guy possibly didn't mention to Goff,
right,
that we think he gave to Tony. One of them involved a Staffordshire case.
Yes, Tony mentioned, apart from the 7 bodies up in Dalby Forest in Yorkshire, there was an 8-year-old girl found in Staffordshire. Now, I don't think it said to me where in Staffordshire it was, or what year it was, or what state her body was in, but he implied that her injuries were the usual classic modus operandi of, the usual jaw strip, organs removed and all the rest of it, and being very clean and bloodless again.
Right.
Like there was no blood recorded, part of the information went with the 7 bodies in Dalby Forest.
Right.
Now this girl, being Staffordshire, I would say it was even money, it would be in the Cannock Chase area,
right,
because there has been quite a lot of UFO activity around Cannock Chase.
Right. And another case involving a 4x4 vehicle, this time back on Brecon Beacons.
Oh right, yes. Yes, thanks for reminding me. Yes, this was Brecon Beacons again, which is interesting, isn't it? And there was a family in a 4x4 vehicle. I don't know what the model was. If he told me he didn't. I can't remember. And they went missing for a period of time, and I think some searches were set up to go and find them. They found the vehicle first of all, with no occupants, parked up some remote spot. And one of the things that they observed was that all the seats had been ripped out in a very unusual fashion. What exactly he means by that, we don't know. But then a day or two later, they found the family. It was mum and dad, and a boy and a girl. Ages, if he did tell me, I can't remember. And they were laid out in a row on the grass or by the roadside, with again the classic mutilation injuries.
Tony Dodd is sadly no longer with us, and attempts to obtain these photographs from his widow have proved fruitless. I contacted Derek many times between 2009 and 2011, but he was reluctant to give me details because he had suffered intimidation and was very wary of speaking to anyone. I continued to request meetings with him during 2010, and in November 2011 he finally agreed to meet me and record our conversation, but would not go on camera. Also present at this meeting was David Coggins, a friend of Derek Goff, who has known him for many years and was in touch with him when he first made contact with his military source. Coggins sat in on my meeting with Derek Goff and occasionally speaks in the recorded interview. The interview was intended for my own use at the time, but recently Derek Goff has agreed to allow me to publicise it. What follows are extracts from this initial meeting. Bear in mind that I have recently fully verified that Derek Goff's source is real. Is that where the story starts, Derek, with you putting the notice up?
Yes, yeah.
Was that what year was that then?
1986, November.
Okay, so if you could explain from there, from maybe your interest in UFOs first, and then what you did.
Well, my interest in UFOs started when I was a child. But going on from there, it was, we had an incident in Aberfan in October 96. After that incident, I was really interested, so I thought I'd try to do my own investigations, information on UFOs. So I compiled some posters, went up to the area of Cwmcadlan, near Brecon, up near the Story Arms, and put them up on trees.
Right.
Because there's a visitor centre as well. That was on the 2nd of November, 96. On 6th of January 97, I had a phone call, which I wasn't home at the time, stating that a gentleman would like to speak to me in regard to a poster that somebody given him would been up there,
Right.
who was in the military.
Okay.
And the story went from there. He gave me the gist on the phone what it was about, and he said it's more serious than lights in the sky, and I arranged to meet him.
Okay.
And he did say he was in Special Forces. He said, would you like, whose car were you using? So I said, he said, can we use mine? I said, yeah, fair enough. So my partner at the time jumped in the back seat. I jumped in the front. Before we started off, before car was started, he showed me his documents, which was a card, like a credit card size, perhaps a little bit smaller than that. And it had an emblem on it. I'm not sure the emblem, but it was like a credit card then, with that little silver thing on it. And on the top there was NATO.
But even in NATO, I mean, I spent 2.5 years at RAF Germany, and you got the Dutch, the Germans, the Belgians, the Norwegians, the French, us and the Americans, and they've got big bases in in Germany they had at the time. And I would suggest that the people with the clout, even in NATO, is the US.
Right.
You know, the US military.
Right.
They predominantly, I think, rule the roost. That's my opinion, anyway.
This is who I am. He gave me his V5, which is from his documents for his car, to prove who he was.
Yeah.
I had already taken his number plate anyway,
Yeah.
to check myself. So I knew who he was, and then he stated that he was in this Group 58, part of the Special Forces. He had other military documents as well,
Right.
passes for RAF St Athens and mainly barracks. We jumped in the car, we started off, we went up to Caerphilly, down to Cardiff. I mean, he must have been doing 25, 30 miles an hour. I mean, on the A470,
Right.
that's slow. We carried on talking, and he started telling me about, he was on find and secure. That's what his job was, find and secure.
Find and secure.
Yeah, when objects came down. We carried on the conversation. My partner was taking notes and about writing, but then he come out with some photographs. Stopped the car in a lay-by.
And did he say how many was in his team when they go out to these?
5. But the important thing about it is when these objects came down, their job is to find and secure an area. And put his hand in his pocket and then took out these photographs. Colour, full colour. Asked me, was I alright? With the feeling of seeing something I wouldn't be sure of. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking of being a bit naive. Showed me the photographs, and it's just, mouth went dry. It's just something that you think, I'm in a car with this man and he's showing me these. You know what I mean? And he was a big bloke, like.
Right.
What were the photographs of, Derek?
Okay.
A girl and boy. Girl of 16, boy of 21.
Right.
Can't go through it now, so I can't...
Difficult for you to
Can't do it.
explain Right. So there were 11 photographs. Right. And
no genitals. Had gone.
just take your time.
Teeth missing. That's and the boy had, most of his skin was peeled off. All the top layers, just red. It's just horrifying.
Right.
And that was horrifying enough on its own, but to think that you're in a car with this man and my partner in the back, I mean, I think I'm a bit handy, but compared to this guy, after what I seen, I thought, and I'm stuck in the middle of this.
Right.
Anything could have happened to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So just to specifically ask you about the injuries, Derek, if that's okay. Did you see any edges of flesh cuts or anything like that?
No, just no genitals, nothing.
Right, okay.
All gone.
But there weren't any. I mean, like in the animal mutilation cases, you have certain characteristics.
No, where the genitals are, it was like a circle, like
A circle.
gone out, like a cutter had gone in them, but it was,
Like a cutter had gone in and taken them out. Okay.
yeah, it's just, but there was no mess, eh?
No mess.
Which I understand now, but I didn't understand then. But now I know about
Right.
this blood thing that
Right.
carries on. I mean, it's just clean cut. It was just like somebody had put a cutter in and
Right.
taken it.
So just to get them, we'll quickly list them. So the genitals were gone on both the male and the female.
Yeah.
Right. And what about the breasts on the
Gone.
female?
No, nothing. No teeth. No eyes.
No teeth, no
Lips
eyes.
are gone.
Okay. And were they decomposed at all? Or
No.
is
That's
this-
another
right. Okay.
Funny thing.
And was the skin gone on the entire bodies on both of them then?
No, just on the boy.
On the boy. So he
said it's like somebody just peeled it off.
Right.
All the top part.
Right. And but the girl had her head hair removed and all of that.
All the hair gone. It's like if it looked like a newborn child that had been, but had grown up, born like that. Nothing.
Right.
No facial hair, nothing at all.
So she just had genitals removed. And
Breast
removed.
Lips. No, well, if I say eyes, the eyes were sunken in then.
Okay.
And he said to me that when he checked it, because he got to check for certain things, possibly life, there was nothing there.
And did it look as though the chest cavities and stomach area were sunken at all, or did they look like normal?
No, they looked. Well, the breast was just like somebody had sliced the breasts off.
Okay.
And it was just red there, just that deep colour of red. But there was nothing coming down the sides or.
So was any blood dripping on the carpet?
No, nothing at all. Nothing.
Yeah, so we were just talking earlier about how similar this sounds to some animal mutilation cases. For example, if taking breasts, we find that in some of your cases, tell us what has happened with udders and all the rest of it.
Yes. It's quite common for large semicircular or circular cuts to be made and a whole udder of a cow to be removed. Or on the side of the body sometimes, in sheep as well.
Right.
So why they're doing that, I don't know.
I mentioned before that on both bodies, Goff claims that they were hairless. All the hair had been removed on the heads and the pubic hair.
So that checks out with the 7 bodies up in Dalby Forest. Then,
yeah, and we were looking at a picture of a seal earlier on, which just tell us about that, David. I think you've got it down there.
Yeah, this is interesting because we're back in Yorkshire again, on the beach at Filey, which is not a million miles from Dalby Forest, on the Yorkshire coast, and I think it's a harbour seal, and it's got some very neat holes at the back end. There's two circular holes, probably in the anal area, and the second one genital, and then there's a sort of oval-shaped hole further up its tummy, very close to the circular hole there, and then the head has been completely stripped of all tissue, not a whisker, and very neat sort of edge. There's a massive abrupt change between its neck area, with it's still the outer skin there and the blubber, and then you've got the skull and the jaw, including the ears and the back of the head, pristine, and it also had one of the flippers.
Did he say where these photographs were taken?
Yes, he did. Well, I asked him that.
Yeah. And where was that?
Up in Brecon Beacons.
Up in the Brecon Beacons area. Right.
And did he explain to you what their part of the mission was in dealing with those corpses? Just tell us what he said.
Wait for the military to turn up.
Right.
The Americans always turned up.
So their role was to go there, seal the area off,
find and secure,
and
do nothing else.
And then do nothing else. So they weren't allowed to touch them.
Nope, nothing.
Right. Then they had to wait for the Americans.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And did he say what the Americans then did with the?
There was a police officer was called up to the military range up in Brecon. Top military police officer, I think, as above inspector. And they were told he tried to intervene on the investigation that was going on because it was in between public land and military land.
Right.
And the American officer said to the gentleman that I was I'd been in touch with, if he doesn't go, he said, shoot him.
Right.
That's how bad it was, he said.
Right.
And he said, believe in me, if he hadn't gone, he said, I would have to done it. I was under orders, I had to do it.
So this team he was in were under orders from the American?
Always Americans, he said, always.
Okay.
And that's not the first time. He said he had other photos as well. This is where this other gentleman that we're talking about from Yorkshire got more information out of him again, and other photographs.
Can we name that?
Yeah, Tony Dodd.
Tony Dodd. So, and did Tony Dodd tell you where he put them, or what he did with them, or whether he gave them to anybody else?
He said he got them in. I got some in my possession. I've already put them in a safe place, he said, but there are other places. He didn't say friends, other places.
Other places, plural.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, because that's one thing that I have tried to do. David Caton spoke to his wife to try and get those, but she allegedly threw out all of his research material when he died. So. Or
could somebody have got there?
So he showed you the photographs on the first time, 11 photographs. Did he give you the photographs at that point or not?
No, not then.
Right.
No.
So did he tell you what they do with the bodies when the Americans take them away?
RAF St Athens.
RAF St Athens.
The north side.
The north side.
That's coming up from Barry.
So that was where they would always go.
Yes.
And then presumably you don't know where after that. Or
that's where the Americans were. Right. Down in an hangar. He said it was a big building on the north side coming up from as you're coming through Barry towards Cardiff. It's on the north side. You can see it there. He said.
Right.
Did he take you up to the Brecon Beacons to show you where things happened?
Yeah, he showed me burn marks. Burn marks in the grass.
Burn marks. Right.
Size of bigger than this room.
Right.
There's nothing grew on it. It's brown.
So bigger than this room. We're in a room about what, 20 odd feet long. So 20 feet.
And there was no. It wasn't. It was just a massive piece of burnt ground. Nothing on it. It wasn't, as people say, marked little circles. It was just one big massive circle.
So did he give you the impression then that the military really have got no control over the UFO? The UFO is doing its own thing and they're there to clean up afterwards? Is that?
That's what he said. What he didn't understand was, I had to ask him the question, how did you take photographs? I mean, it's not your job.
Yeah.
But he said, we've seen so much of this in the UK and elsewhere.
Really?
That we started carrying these little cameras around. For their own reason then, I mean, because they couldn't believe what was happening.
Yeah, yeah.
But to have them developed, he had to give them to a special friend of his who was into developing.
Would they be dispatched from Wales then to go and recover?
RAF St Athens, that's where he was based.
He was based, so
like
they could go to another country.
He said if they could be, the fast response, they could be anywhere. And they also had planes at their disposal and get anywhere. If it is to do within British jurisdiction, they would be there.
Right.
But the Americans would also be there as well.
Right. And did he say, if it was somewhere that was more remote, did he say how they found out about the cases?
Radar.
So it was
again.
So it was. So they can pick up the UFOs on radar and they can differentiate that it's a UFO then. Presumably.
What he said, they can't say they know nothing about them because they're waiting for them.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Did he give you the impression that sometimes he was sent to areas before the UFOs arrived?
Yeah.
Right.
On the expectation.
All right, so they'd be dispatched before the UFOs arrived. That's interesting. But he didn't. Did he say anything about how they would know that?
No, they were sent to Salisbury Plain. Things are happening down there. That they was talking about mutilations down there as well. To find out what happened to the people there.
Did he mention any mutilations were taking place other than in Wales?
Yeah, Scotland, Ireland.
Right.
Now we're talking about places in Ireland which comes under the Republic, which is County Wicklow, Kilkenny.
Right.
What I still can't understand is how we knew the girl was 16 and how the boy was 21.
Right.
How did he know that? They were already dead.
Right. And were they laid out on the ground or were this?
Perfectly. I'm glad you asked that question. Absolutely perfect. It's like if it were somebody just placed them down, like if they gone to sleep.
And the 16-year-old girl and the 21-year-old man,
that was a car.
That was a car, and the seats were gone.
Yeah, front seats.
And the engine was running with the doors open.
Which I don't understand.
They were laid out on the ground. Okay.
Some distance away, not
right next to the car. No. Right. Okay.
They found the car first.
Right.
And then went on their little exercise to see what else it was around.
So,
doors open, big camper van, called from RAF St Athens, went up there, circled, seen where it was.
In the helicopter?
Yeah. Landed, away from they got decontamination or something, or scenes of something. Right. Went over, inspected the vehicle, toys, and clothes, just ordinary things, and no engine running, lights on. Never found nothing.
Right.
No bodies, nothing. That van then was taken down to RAF St Athens.
Right.
Again, which you would go for testing. Like you said, the Americans would be down there again.
Right, so this was just presumably a family that had gone missing. So the bodies were never found in this?
Nothing.
Right.
And that's another thing he said. We finding vehicles, there's nobody around, but there's no investigation. I got to be honest, so after you you've seen something, and you get up in the morning, you can't believe what you've seen.
Yeah.
So in the conversation that very next day, which was the Tuesday, 7th of January, I asked him to meet again because I wanted to talk to him, asking some more questions. Like I said to him, what can I do with the information? He said, you can do anything with the information as long as you don't give my name.